Welcome to the Message to the Black Diaspora. I'm one of your hosts, Rashaki Maskani, and our other host is Dr. Charles Alexander. This is a podcast series that featured dynamic, prolific guests such as Dr. Marlon Karanga, Sister Mama Amicus out of Ghana, Dr. Iris, and many others that we have had. And this show is dedicated and livicated to those who came before us and those who remain. And we have a great time learning information that is very vital to our survival and upliftment. So I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Charles Alexander, and he's going to introduce our guest. Dr. Charles.
Thank you, Brother Rashaki. Good morning, everyone. And I come to you as a member of the Level Set. And the Level Set consists of Attorney Larry Fields, D. Mike Jones, Attorney Gerald Christmas, and myself, Dr. Charles L. Alexander. On a weekly basis, we convene to discuss current events in the context of past struggles, strategies, and the relative wisdom of our ancestors and elders. Our goal is to enhance pattern recognition in order to facilitate critical thinking. We collaborate with the Community Education Network to produce Message to the Black Diaspora, in which we feature an elder who shares wisdom on a subject of their choosing and one deemed beneficial to the people. Today, we bring to you from the south side of Chicago, Olumenji. Olumenji is a registered social worker, manager, and administrator. He is also a registered substance abuse counselor and a member of the Communiversity. A trained mediator, he is credentialed by the Neighborhood Justice Center of Atlanta, as well as the Harvard School of Law. He developed an award-winning program called Project Peace and is the author of two books. Last but not least, he is a former certified trauma professional and is currently a trauma and resiliency life coach. And again, today, we bring you Olumenji.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Charles, or as I know you, Kofi, nephew. I appreciate the invitation to come before you. I am a member of the Communiversity. I'm retired in all credentials and all that stuff. Today I've come to you to discuss the issue of violence and trauma. You have to excuse me because I'm in my bed and so let me get to it. I want to dedicate this to Bobby Wright, Anderson Thompson, Jake Carruthers, Carl Bell, Mbadi Shakur, who are all ancestors. So let's get into it. Our purpose today is to discuss violence and trauma conflict within the Black community. Again, to discuss violence and trauma conflict within the Black community. The first thing I want to make unequivocally clear is that the Black community is under a state of siege. Secondly, that the Black community is suffering from distress and duress. Duress is an extremely steady flow of pressure each and every day. One example of duress is a pressure cooker, where you put the food in, you put water, whatever, and then you begin to build up the pressure in the pot. And eventually what's in there softens or maybe even dissolves away. Distress, as in stress, is a pathological form of stress. I don't use stress because I don't think it's pertinent and relevant to us as Black people as much as distress is. And distress, according to Hans Sawyer, is pathogenic. That means disease forming. One example of that is high blood pressure. If we were to examine all of our families, friends, and even ourselves, uh, at some point you would find people who have hypertension. And hypertension is very dangerous because from hypertension can come many different catastrophic illnesses, strokes, heart attacks, etc. So when I say distress, I mean the form of stress, which is disease forming, pathogenic. Perhaps another way of looking at this is that we are, as a people, in between a rock and a hard place. Another way is that when it rains, it constantly pours on the Black community. But I would also like to give you an African proverb from the Akan people, and that is, life is struggle. Again, life is struggle.
I'm not hearing the brother.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Is,
Okay.
life is struggle. We are, as a community, in a constant state of survival. Now, that's very important for us to understand, which will be evident as we begin to go through these pieces. So what I'd like to do is at least do an hour and a half, and then we go into questions, discussion, dialogue, whatever you would like to do. The next point I want to get to is that violence is a disruption of health within the African American community. That violence is a disruption of health in the African American community. Now, what does this mean? First, let's understand what I mean when I talk about health. Health is a state of the highest level of your well-being. That health is a state of the highest level of your well-being. It is the utilization of inherent resources which produce resiliency to face challenges, both external and internal. Health is mental, because if you don't have good mental health, believe me, physically, you're not going to be healthy. It's spiritual, it's physical, it's social, and it's environmental. All these things are interactive things that we function in as a system. And these are the components: social, ourselves, and what we bring in ourselves. We are, by design, integrated beings, integrated mind, body, and spirit, because how can you separate the sky from the earth? They're all interwoven in some shape, form, or fashion. We are hardwired for survival. We are hardwired for life. That means your organs, your anatomical design, your physiology, all of these things are designed for one thing, that you survive. And then culture comes along to make sure then now you can thrive in the environment that you're in. So we have had to thrive and survive in a hostile environment for over 400 and some odd years. And that's important to understand. We have thrived, okay? Limited, because it's always a limitation, but we have done a creative response in all the eras that we have been here in this country based on what we knew to do and what we actualized within ourselves to do. That doesn't mean that everything we did was correct, but it means that it was the best that we could do within the circumstances that we found ourselves in. Okay? Now, when we talk about health, we have to talk about health determinants. And these are the things that have an impact on health, such as your social. And when I say social, I mean individual, family, community, and wherever else you are in the world. What is your connection to them? Economic status, because economics impacts. Because if you need medicine, then it's a question of who do I rob today, Peter or Paul, to get the medicine. Your physical environment influences us. Our DNA, the ancestral information that is embedded within our bodies that gives us the capacity to do many things. It's what our tendencies are. Access to care and use of health services, because many people are sick, but they can't access the healthcare system because they may not have insurance, or Medicaid or Medicare is limiting, or they don't have the capacity to pay the fee, or this, that, and the other. And then once you're in the system, how do you now navigate the system so that you can get the things that you need to have? Culture. Culture is a way of life, but also culture produces unique and peculiar behaviors. Peculiar because it's special, but it's special for the environment that you're in. It is an adoption, it is an adaptation. Employment, there was a study done by, I can't think of the individual's name, but he discovered that for every percentage of unemployment going up, there would be a greater percentage of social ills, whether it was crime, alcoholism, substance abuse. Okay. And then ultimately, this is what I added as a social or a health determinant. Well, are you a free and liberated people, or are you in a system that you don't really have the power to control, and that you're in a constant struggle? Because if you don't have that, then that has an impact on your health. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is what health means. Health comes from the Old English word, which means health, which means wholeness, being whole, sound, or fit. All right. And I don't want to go more into the detail of that. We can discuss that. Everything is political, and health is the most political thing for any people to have. That sense of well-being and being able to realize your potentialities, mind, body, and spirit. So let's talk about what are the factors that begin to influence violence. First off, I want to make it unequivocally clear America is a violent country. America has a history of being a violent country. Rap Brown, our dear brother who's made his transition, as an ancestor once remarked that violence in America is as American as apple pie. And he never lied about that. But then, under I believe, Milton Eisenhower, who was the brother of David or Dwight Eisenhower, headed a commission where they studied violence. And if you can ever get a hold of that study, the things that they came up with, they found that violence was utilized in the political, the economic, and the social in American society since the beginning, with the killing of Indians or the native peoples of this country, with the enslavement and the killing of the African people brought here, to the killing of Mexicanos uh, uh, over the takeover of land, to the killing, working to death of Chinese and Asians who were brought here as laborers, etc. America is a violent country. America sells one of America's biggest gross national products is the selling worldwide of weaponry. Let me go over that again. One of the biggest aspects of the American gross domestic product is the selling of arms all over the world. Americans have more guns per person. Some, if you were to spread Americans all across the country and give each one of them a gun, many of them would have 3 guns. They just recently legalized, or they're going to legalize, the use of what is called suppressors, but really, you know, as silencers.
No,
You know them as silencers. And you can do your own research on that to see what I'm saying. Silencers were used by farmers to hunt vermin, and then they were used in the wars with gangsters. And then in the 60s, with the Cold War, they used silencers for assassinations. And then they outlawed them in this country, and now they're going back to them. So again, I hope that I've established that America is truly a violent country. Now, we got to talk about the factors for violence. 1, isolation. In our communities, we're very isolated. For example, do you know the people who live next door to you? Do you know who is your next door? If you live in a rental development, do you know the people in those developments? At one time in the old Black communities, we knew that because we had communities. We don't have communities now. We don't even have neighborhoods, but we do have hoods. And so one of the biggest health problems in America is isolation. There was recently a piece put in Fortune magazine where they talked about the loss of public hanging out spaces and how it impacted Blacks and Hispanics the most. If you're isolated and you don't know the person next to you, then this creates the opportunity for alienation. We are self-alienated against ourselves. And the consequence of that is the cheapness of Black life, which is affirmed and validated and reinforced by the white judicial system. This is why if you kill a Black person, you will get less time than if you kill a white person. Black life has always been cheap in this country, but never has it been so cheap as in the Black community now, where if you stepped on somebody's shoes, you may get shot. People don't discuss anymore, they argue, even couples. And then the killing of women, the killing of Black women over relationships, violence. This is a disruptor of health because it erodes the most fundamental thing that a people must have if they are to be a people, and that is trust, so that they collaborate and cooperate with each other to advance their cause and or interests, if that makes sense. Alienation is another reason for violence. Of course, white supremacy, crime. Now, crime is all over, but in many places it's controlled. It's controlled. There's some places that the people have histories of being violent, but when you go in those neighborhoods, you don't see it because it's controlled by people who are involved with crime, but they don't like violent crime. They'll do gambling, they'll do drugs, they'll do theft, but they don't want violent crime because it disrupts the well-being and money in those communities. White supremacy is a factor for crime in the Black community. These are learned behaviors that we learn from them. I am not saying African people were not violent or aggressive. What I'm saying is the violence that we learned in the South over the honor codes. There's a book called Listening to Killers by James Gambino. Listening to Killers. If you ever get a chance to read that book, you should, because it lets you know the mindset of what our young people have adopted. And what does that mean? It means in some environments, the violence is such a norm that they just assume that's the way it is in the world. And they adopt that attitude. How many times have we worked with young people and they said, well, I don't expect to be 24 anyway. What, are you proud of that? But that's their expectation. So therefore, many of them have this death wish where they put themselves in continuous circumstances that are high risk and hazardous to have somebody else take them out of their misery. And what I would want to say is that hurt people hurt people. Let me say that again. Hurt people hurt people. And part of our violence is that we have child soldiers, just like they have and the continent of Africa and many other places where young men are and babies or young boys are being uh, recruited, trained, and disciplined to carry out whatever it is that those people who have recruited them require them to do. We got to deal with the idea of drugs. Drugs has a tremendous impact on the Black community. Each drug that people take as a result of that drug produces a certain type of behavior. I'll give you an example. How many of you, as you were growing up, knew somebody, they didn't really want to fight anything, anything like that, but time they had them some of that street hooch, uh, uh, wine or liquor, they want to fight everybody now because alcohol releases inhibitions. The danger of having this drug is that the lack of predictability within families and within communities. Because if I don't know your behaviors, I don't know how to approach you. There's some drugs that, like cocaine, is a stimulant. It was used, it was chewed in places like Peru and other places as the indigenous population there were climbing up the hills in the mountains where the air was very thin. The higher you went, and air is energy. So when they chewed it, it gave them the boost that they needed to have to go up the hill. So imagine somebody who is very stimulated and then you agitate them. What can be predictable here? There'll probably be some violence. There'll probably be some conflict. There probably will be some argument. And as a result of that argument, somebody will get hurt or maybe even killed or will kill. I want to give you a statistic. There was a brother by the name of Dr. Frederick Harper. He wrote a book called Alcohol, Alcoholism, and Abuse in America. And this was autopsies taken in D.C., Washington, D.C., of young men or victims of homicide. And what they discovered is that 50% of the people who had been shot at the time of their shootings had been drinking. They were either a recipient of drinking or they had used the drinking. They were high before they actually shot someone. If you lose your young men, that has a direct impact on your population. I don't know if young people are still in the marriage. I doubt it. And I'm not being negative, but because of the problems between men and women, many young men, many young women don't particularly see themselves in those areas. But if you don't have young men, then it creates a surplus of Black women, which is what we have already, which creates social problems. Alcohol is the biggest legal drug, and then followed by pills, and then, of course, the illicit drugs. Crime adds to community duress and distress. It adds so much so that people don't really want to come out and look at change because, or they want to do everything before it gets dark. And this is the environment that is being created by violence. What are the risk factors of interpersonal violence? And I wanna reinforce that violence is a learned behavior, but I'll get into that later. First, most shootings, stabbings relate to people that you know. The people who you are familiar with. People that you are acquainted with. Might be somebody you know next door or on the job. People who may be your colleagues. Again, you have an argument on the job. Place of work. They call that workplace violence. And then strangers, people you don't know, but they're predators, or you get into a conversation or confrontation and they decide because they don't know you, they don't care about you, to simply take you out. And one of the key pieces of risk factors are arguments, because everybody's trying to win the argument. And if you lose the argument, then you want to go to the fist. If you lose the fist fight, then you want to go to what are the knife, gun, baseball bat, bottle, whatever. The violence of words and language. Many times what people say and how they say it creates, promotes, and advances confrontations. If indeed there's a confrontation, what begins to happen is at some point, unless saner heads intervene, there will be physical fisticuffs. So just imagine on a Friday, Saturday night, you're out in the streets, you go to a joint, everybody been drinking, and somebody gets to arguing, and these people have weapons. Do you think somebody's gonna get hurt or killed? Or maybe somebody's in there and they're with somebody that somebody has a beef with, and so they kill them, and then they kill you or wound you or hurt you because you were associated with them. I don't ask you to agree with me as much as to consider, what if I'm right? Let's look at it another way. When we use words in a violent way, what does it do? It causes us to have emotions. It triggers our emotions. And when emotions are triggered, then people got to do something. It's not a logical, rational thing. It's just you got to do something. And then that something escalates until at some point people get hurt. Here's some other things to consider when we talk about risk factors. What the drug usage is, what is the biochemical effect of usage. I don't know, some of you might have remembered the angel dust, where it take a whole squad of people to hold somebody down, because that's just how crazy that was, which in the end, I think was an animal tranquilizer that had been consumed based on something that had been laced. Leisure time with people being bored. A lot of these things happen in the late night and on weekends in places of entertainment. Places of entertainment where people go to release their frustrations, their hurts, their pains, and they just want to have fun. Displaced anger or emotions, meaning you mad at somebody else, but you don't take it out on them, you take it on someone else. The inability to resolve conflict in a productive manner. I mean, that's important. We have forgotten how to resolve conflict without, now it's about winning. And people will do anything to win because they don't want to lose face. The relationships between people, what it is. So, what are your relationships with people? What are your connections to people? And what if you don't have a connection? Or what if the connections that you have are poor and bad? And you can see this with little kids in the playground fighting. Everybody is rooting for their person. And then they go back to school, or they go back to the neighborhood and community, trying to resolve it another way because it couldn't be resolved appropriately within the school. These are just some items and factors and risk factors that relates to interpersonal relationships and the risk of violence. Now I want to get into violence produces in families, individuals, and children, communities, short-term, long-term trauma. Short-term, long-term trauma. Definition of trauma. Trauma is a Greek word which means wound. And that wound is internal, external, psyche. The wound is brought about by external cause. Psychic wound, injury, emotional wound, physical wounding, spiritual wounding. Psychological distress is due to unpredictable events. What does that mean? Where you are, an earthquake happens and you just get out, but you've seen people swallowed up by the earth. Or a building fall on somebody walking the streets. Or you see waves. All that leaves leaves an imprint into your consciousness. Predictable events, activities, human actions, but they all have some type of impact on us. But remember, as I said to you earlier on, we are wired for life. So you have organs and systems that are designed for what they call fight or flight or freeze in order to help you to survive that circumstance or circumstances. But there are different types of trauma. There are different types of wounding. Okay. Trauma then has various levels of degrees. Be clear that whatever level of trauma, it produces symptoms. Some examples are irritability, where people are just very irritable, they don't want to talk about it. Numbness, where they're walking and it just seems nothing is impacting them. Hypervigilance, they're always looking, checking both sides, up, down, left, right. Arousal, the slightest thing, and they'll jump up. Flashbacks, meaning that that imprinting comes up based on certain cues that are in their environment. They can't sleep disturbances, poor concentration, startled reflex. It's like you walk up and you touch them and they jump. Grief, they're still grieving because of what has happened. Okay. But all levels of trauma produce symptoms. And symptoms are indications, futures, and they're representative of something. Trauma is distressing and emotionally disturbing. Trauma is an injury which produces life chaos. So here are some of the outcomes of trauma. Trauma can and will disrupt life and create life disorder. It renders hurt, pain, and suffering. It produces life changes. To use when I say life changes, I mean your state of being or your state existence. But it also can facilitate life growth and development, spiritual reconciliation, revitalization, renewal, revival, or the reorganization of life meaning. It produces short-term or long-term of struggle or endurance. What I would like to do, I want to talk about historical trauma. Historical trauma is a form of intergenerational trauma, and that simply means that trauma has been passed on from generation to generation as a people. So we as a people are still suffering from not only what happened in slavery, but the Reconstruction, Jim Crow era, and American apartheid, and all the other things that the African people in this country have had to go through. And this is because we need power. Historical trauma is about the microcosm of us as a people and selfhood as a people or peoplehood, and our yearning to be greater than our circumstances. The impact of historical trauma trickles down and manifests to local communities, families, individuals, which is a reflection of them as a people, nation, group. Trauma has various conditions or risk factors that facilitate and advance the woundings of our minds, bodies, and spirits. So I'm going to name you four. I'm going to name you four, and these are what, or rather five, and these are what I have come up with, because these are risk factors, but they're also risk factors that come as a result of people and humans and social systems. One is where you find life conditions that are tenuous, and tenuous means that they're meager, flimsy, fragile, nothing to hang on. That can mean that this can be a risk factor for trauma. Life conditions where are such that they are precarious, meaning uncertain, insecure, shaky, unpredictable, unstable. The word precarious means to obtain by entreaty, meaning that your situation is dependent upon the favor or pleasure of the people who have power over your circumstances. It means that you depend on chance circumstances. Vulnerable, meaning that you are susceptible to receiving wounds, that you are open to attack or assault, and that you're in a careless situation. Dependence, meaning that you're resource scarce and you are therefore existing in subsistence living, that your living is inadequate. Marginalized, meaning that we're living on the peripheral, on the edge, as opposed to the center. What I think I'd like to do, what I'd like to do is really dialogue and exchange of conversations, because this is a very long piece, and maybe through that dialogue, I can present to you the various things that I wanted to present to you with. So, if that's okay with you all, let's do a dialogue.
Okay, that'll be good. Dr. Charles, did you want to start off, or you wanted me to go around the panel?
Sure, I can start. Thank you, Bubba. When you talk about the effects of of the various pressures and our various responses, does the research suggest that there are any regional differences in how people are responding to these things, or any variances in the pressures regionally?
Well, when you talk about us as Black people, there's some Black people who may be in a situation better than other Black people. Then it may be to a lesser degree, but it's still there. I give you an example. People moved out into the suburbs because they were trying to leave the city. But then eventually, what happened? The same thing that they left the city from now has followed them out into another area. And suburbs are normally considered an update from cities. This is why the Europeans, when we started taking over the cities, moved into the suburbs. Rural areas, uh, there's a similarities there too, because their lives are different, and they have different codes. They have different practices. So my answer to your question is that there, these conditions where we are have a consistency. They only differ in degree and level of degree, or the type of whereas, let's say in Chicago, they'll use a bunch of guns. Maybe someplace else they use knives. But what's the difference? Black folks are still dying, and we're still self-destructive. You may kill less with knives, and you may kill more with guns. It's what you have access to. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Dr. JC, are you available for a comment question? Are you able to unmute? Okay. Brother Ahi? Oh, Dr. JC?
I am here. What was your question?
Oh, do you have a question or comment for Brother Olumenji?
I do. I've listened to him. I've missed some bits and parts, and I'm sorry. But my question is, I've heard you speak about trauma in its capacity of what causes trauma and some of the actual symptoms of trauma. But when our communities at home, and then we talk about it, what are some of the solutions would suggest?
Well, one, we have to be clear on what the problem is. When I do this presentation, and I'm not saying you, people always want to get to, well, what's the solution? Because when I start talking about these things, it impacts them because it impacts me. It impacts all of us. What do we need to do? First, number one, we need to develop and reorganize community. Because when you have community, you establish your norms. You establish what's good. I'm assuming that you're probably from a more mature generation when we had community. It wasn't perfect, but in those communities, everybody knew everybody. And the worst thing that could happen to a family is if people in the community said that they were ignorant and restricted their children from playing with the other children. That's a community sanction. We have to have community. And within that, we have to start getting involved with kids. We have to start working with them in certain skill sets. And one of the most important skill sets is how to de-escalate and how to self-regulate. And we used to do it. We'd sit the little brothers down and we'd have them learn how to breathe. And we'd have them breathing and doing breath control. And if they got to fussing and fighting, we'd have them sit down and they would have to breathe. Eventually, the problem went away. but we also showed them how they needed to deal with each other. And then we have to organize ourselves for power. We have to have power. Power is the capacity to do, to carry out and execute your agenda. We have to fix the relationships between men and women. Black women ain't going nowhere. Black men ain't going. No race is going to let its women go to another race. The Hispanics ain't going to let black men take their senoritas away, and we shouldn't allow them to take our women. We got to fix this, because somewhere down the line, white folks have driven this wedge between each other. Women are a resource, but so are men. And they were created to build communities and to advance their people and race. Race and people cannot get to where they need to be in terms of their existence without each other. So we got to fix it. And we have to model what we want young people to see. Next thing is we need to impact and really restrict kids listening to that stuff that they have the audacity to call black music. That gangster rap stuff where everybody's a this and a that, where they idolize gangsters. They idolize shooting. And most of the people who make this stuff are middle class, and they ain't never been exposed to it. Some of them have, but it's pretend. But when kids see that, they don't know it's pretend. The other thing is, I think brothers and sisters young brothers and sisters should go through rites of passage so that they have an understanding of their cultural selves as well as appreciate their cultural selves. I think the next thing is that in the Black community, we need to have people who know how to do first aid, do disaster preparedness, etc. We need to change attitudes, and we need to struggle with that in all places that we are. Those are small things, but those are things that we can do. We need to build businesses, but then we know that already. We need to preserve our scarce resources, but most importantly, we need to change our social attitudes and our social behaviors in order for us to do what we need to do. Otherwise, the enemy uses that to his or her advantages. I hope that I in somewhat answered some part of your question.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but we all know that trauma actually starts in the womb, and we also know that if generationally speaking, if you don't know what you're doing wrong is wrong, you don't know how to correct that wrong. And as a result of, it's kind of like we're just kind of on a hamster's wheel, and we're going through the same trauma repeatedly over and over and over again. And when we talk about rites of passage, we have to identify whose rites of passage do we speak of, because that could come from multiple places, and that too is one of those things that have to be taught. I'm sitting in a hair salon, so there's multiple women here listening to you, and they too have questions. So I'm going to turn it over to them as well, and I'm going to get to peace.
I understand.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
No, go ahead.
No,
You
no,
had
go
a
ahead. Okay, so So I'll tell you my age. I'm 39 years old, and I hear you talk about trauma and all that stuff. And we're all sitting here. Some of the stuff that you're speaking of, we do agree with. But me being a 39-year-old living in this generation that I live in and looking at the younger generation, I feel like one of our biggest problems in the Black community, we don't know our culture. We don't know our culture. A lot of people don't know where they come from. And I don't mean by, oh, you come from Africa and you know where your descendants. I'm saying Black community, we don't stick to our own culture. We don't thrive in our cultures. We're so quick to celebrate everyone else's culture, days and stuff like that. So when you talk about teaching kids, what's wrong and what's not wrong. If a child lives in a home where all they know is a single parent and their friends have single parents and the way they live or living with their grandma, their mom lived with the grandma, they live with their grandma, all they know. So how do they know it's trauma if that's their way of life? That's how their family members thrive for generations. So how would they know that the things that they're dealing with is considered trauma?
Well, let's deal with it this way. Number one, are you in a Black beauty salon?
Yes. I'm in a Black beauty salon, but there's a community of different races in the salon. So yes, it's a Black beauty salon. We do Black hair, but we open to other races.
Is hair, the styling of hair, is that culture? Are there
What do you mean?
traditions? The styling of
Yeah,
hair.
there's tradition in certain ways you do hair. Yes, that's tradition.
Are there traditions to that?
What do you mean? Styling hair or doing hair?
All of the above: hair care, hair styling, etc. In other words, is there a unique way that you all deal with your hair because of the nature of your hair? And is it traumatizing, or do you have lessons that you remember based on when your nana or your auntie or your mother did your hair with the old comb heated on the stove? I'm asking.
Wait, I'm confusing because you're asking, is there traditions when it comes to doing hair?
What I'm saying is, you raise the issue of culture, and I'm saying you're sitting in a Black salon doing Black people's hair. Black people like their hair done a certain kind of way. And I alluded to these things on the front end. What I'm saying to you, they may not know it's trauma. That's why you have people in the communities who do know it's trauma, who do know they've been hurt, they do know they've suffered, etc. And the question is where do I go? Where do I go to receive help? And that's why I said to you early on, access to healthcare. And I said, what was health? It was mental, physical, and spiritual. So, and my point is, I am a rites of passage elder and a rites of passage master, and I bear the title of Nana. That was given to me by my Akan teacher. And yeah, my thing is wherever you can do rites of passage. And it doesn't have to be rites of passage. It could be the equivalency of a boys club, a Boy Scout, but activities, sports, but then you add the culture. Because as long as we don't know ourselves and we don't appreciate ourselves, then we're going to do, as I said early on, hurt people, hurt people. That's trauma. We don't have to get into all the psychological this, that, and the other. The basic is hurt people hurt people. And when you examine why they're hurt, you will see somewhere down the line they have been wounded. So we don't have to go through the psychology books and the psychiatry books. I'm perfectly able to do that if you like. But I'm just saying it's simple. Hurt people hurt people. One of the problems with men and women are relationships where women have been hurt and men have been hurt. And many times they will take that hurt and then they will generalize it to all men and all women. And so they carry that into the next relationship, which doesn't help the relationship, because new relationships where you're not hurt requires a lot of work. But when you bring baggage to it, it adds to the loads. So all I'm saying is, I appreciate your comments and your suggestions, and I hope that some of my responses would be appropriate answer for some of the things that you're talking about here. Trauma exists in the Black community, whether we like it or not. It's factual. Let me give you a statistic. According to the Department of Justice, a national survey of American children found that over the past year, 60% were exposed to crime, violence, or abuse in their homes, schools, and communities. 40% of American children were victims of 2 or more violent acts. 1 in 10 victims of violence, 5 or more times. So for every 10 kids, one of those kids was exposed to violence 5 or more times. Would we consider that child to have been wounded? But of course we would. Okay. Bullying, okay, carries lifelong consequences and imprinted in our consciousness that we carry with us until there's interventions, as I suggested earlier. Let's look at something else here. 1 in 10 American children saw one family member assault another family member. More than 25% have been exposed to family violence during their lives. They have a thing that they call polyvictimization, meaning you've been victimized from a number of different things. All right. The term polyvictimization describes individuals who experience multiple victimizations of different kinds, sexual assault and bullying, or witnessing intimate partner violence and physical abuse. Nearly half of the national sample of children had at least 2 different kinds of victimization in the past year. And over the course of their lives, 66% experienced 2 or more types of violence. 30% experienced 5 or more types of violence. 10% experienced more than 10 different sets of violence. Over the course of their lifetimes, 57% who had experienced intimate partner violence were direct victims of child maltreatment. Now, and of course, as usual, the disparities is when it comes to us, we're disproportionate. So I appreciate your question or your agreement or what you're saying, because this is painful. This is painful as a people to have this happening within our communities. It's hurtful within our communities. And we have to do something. And whatever we do is, excuse my French, it ain't going to be sexy. It's going to require us to do hard work and roll up the sleeves. And community building has to be one of the first things on the agenda. Now, consider the consequences. We could say it's too hard, but when these individuals start taking over neighborhoods and doing to these neighborhoods whatever they choose, and then you're impacted, then you'll say, well, somebody needs to do something. Whatever the choices are, they're going to be hard choices. There are no easy solution to these things, but there are solutions to these things. Did I answer your question, ma'am? Hello? Hello?
They're muted. So I'm a just quickly. Oh, brother Ahi, you have a question
Yes.
or comment?
Maybe when I get through, it may turn into a question. Sounds to
Okay.
me like this is all about our response as a people being put into a pressure cooker. And how do we deal with that? There is a concerted effort to destroy us as a people. And we as a people have to decide who and what we are. And that is the issue. We had a guest on last week that worked with the historically Black colleges. And we were talking about the importance of supporting our HBCUs, getting our young people in, educating them because we need all of the professions that they provide and more. I posed a question about what we are teaching them besides 1 + 1 = 2 about themselves. They're being historically Black college. Are we using Black professors, Black scholars, information to teach them? Are they coming out looking at themselves as part of the African diaspora as opposed to the American Negro? Are they looking at themselves as Americans? And why? So, first, as a people, we have to define who and what we are in America because it keeps going through phases. When we had communities, and our communities were built around, at least when I was growing up, our communities were built around the educational systems that we had, our neighborhood, elementary, junior high school, and high schools. When I walked through my neighborhood and met the different children on my way to school, and they became acquaintances and some even friends, that's how my parents got to know them and their parents through the organizations in the elementary school, parent-teacher associations, music associations, and all that the educational institution had to offer. It was a rallying point. Now, with the destruction of our public school system, children no longer walk together to the schools. They're being driven to different schools, charter schools, parochial schools, what have you. We had central ideas about being Black, about being African American. Now, even in our historically Black colleges, they come out rather being called an American Negro than African or African American. So until we can control our educational system, which is being given back to us because the government says we no longer want anything to do. We're going to give you the local, the state, and the local community control of their educational system. What are we going to teach our children? How are we going to prepare them to help liberate themselves and their people, or we are going to remain in this Negroism, nothing progressive about this, and be uh, uh, held captive, because essentially that's what we are. Because any significant gain we make as a people, there's a concerted effort along with the local whites who are jealous people and the government to eliminate that, to take over the community or any progressive lands or materials or any progress that our people have made, just to take that over. So they have a plan, whether it be an agreement or through their institutions, to destroy us. And in order for us to counter that, first we have to define who and what we are. And the only way we can do that is gain control of our educational systems and our middle class, so-called middle class, who seem to be satisfied with how their lives are going and have no type of participation in their liberation or even in their educational institutions around them for their children. How do we get them to jump on board and identify with those who are on the lower economic ladder under them? And how do we come together? How do we get this educational system to work for us from primary through college and postgraduate? That is my question.
Well, that's a whole lot of question, but
You had a whole lot of information put out there.
let me see what I can do about that. Number one, first off, I don't think that um, European, and this includes the Black HBCUs, educate us. What they do is they train us. We go to school to learn certain types of professions and certain types of knowledge. I don't deny the extreme importance of HBCUs. However, I went to Atlanta University, by the way. Some of these HBCUs, they perpetuate the white theories, white this, white that, but these are institutions, and we need institutions, but we have to have people in these institutions that realize what you just said in a mouthful. We have to have people that have a race orientation, that know we are what our circumstances are. And I agree with your analysis. And I'm going to give you 4 quick things that you can go and do your own research on to see that what you're saying is correct. There's 2 books that people, because I don't know if people still read. I know I read. One is called Who Needs the Negro by Sidney Wilmham. They took that book off the market, but maybe you might be able to find it through an old bookseller. That book should be read. And then he's a white boy, but he has done his homework, where he talks about the impact of cybernetics, automation, etc., on the economic and the status of the African American, and he predicts genocide. Next is Samuel Yet in the book called The Choice. Okay, that's a book. Samuel Yet is a black man, and the government did everything they could to prevent that book, and yet end up getting fired, I think, from the Washington Post. So those are 2 books. Now let's go and look at history. The Kerner Report. I would urge anybody who's really, you see, part of the thing is our people don't believe that they don't believe that
that Europeans will take us out because they believe that Europeans need us. That is the
Bro-
fallacy that many of our
Brother,
people,
Brother Olumenji, excuse
many
me,
of our elites believe
brother,
that because they want
Brother
to keep
Olumenji, excuse me,
we suffer from. Uh,
Brother Olumenji.
can you hear me?
You're,
Can you
it's
hear me?
real. Now we can. It was
Can
low.
you
Can
hear
you?
me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We suffer from the betrayal of many of our elites because they want to identify and gain the benefit of the American system. Our people want to be American. However, America has rejected them. And that's a hard thing to accept. Because America has rejected them. Can you hear me?
I hear you, brother.
Yes,
That's
we can
why
hear
I
you
asked.
now. We weren't able to hear
Yeah,
you at first. You're fine. Go ahead.
You
yeah.
can hear me.
And why
Okay.
do they call? Why do we want to be an Americans? And why do
Because
we
I
call
can't.
ourselves Americans?
Hello? Hello?
You
Go
can
ahead, Nana.
continue.
Yeah, I can't. For some reason, I can't really hear you guys.
We can hear you.
Now, the volume is a volume issue. Let me try this. Let me see something here. God. Well, let me. Do you have any volume control there? Let me try.
Not for you, but we can hear you loud and clear.
Huh?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I
No
just can't
control.
hear you. All right. Let me just finish. Uh, because our elites have betrayed us because they this is what we know is the American system. Even though we have always had ancestors who have given us a different point. You can go all the way back to the early 19th century when we were having black conventions and they were trying to settle the issue of what we should be. There was one group headed up by people like Martin Delany who said we need to get out of here. Then there was another group of Frederick Douglass people who said, no, we need to stay here in America. And that is the dichotomy that we end up being split with. We don't know if we want to be this or we want to be that. This is basic, and I probably will catch flack from our women, how our women use other people's hair. Because in America, straight hair has value. The 60s had a cultural shift where our people started saying, no, we're going to wear it natural. And then in the 80s, where they started saying, we're going to wear rose. Okay. These were cultural decisions that at some point, black folks said, well, we're going to fight this. They went to court and they won. They had to fight it in the schools to be able to wear our hair the way we chose to wear it. All right. I mean, that's cultural. All right. So the point I'm trying to say is, uh, in the long term, they would like to see us extinct. They don't want to use the Jewish model of genocide. They would much rather use the uh, the one that they use on the indigenous people in this country, who are called Indians. Where what they did, they killed the environment, i.e., the buffalo. They put them on reservations, making them dependent. Uh, when you look at us, how they're pulling resources out of these communities. And by the way, one of the reasons why you don't have communities is because of the flow of crack going back in the 80s. And that was connected by the federal government
and they used that money to fund the Contras in Latin America. And there was a guy who wrote about it. Ultimately, I think he committed suicide. Uh, and then Maxine Waters uh, did public hearings on it. So we're a threat to American society, or at least that's what they believe. Plus, there's a book by, I can't think of her name, but it's called White Rage, where the Europeans get angry because we exist. If you really understand history and all the things that have been done to us, okay, and yet, despite that, we're able to thrive, but we can't get cocky about that because we're in a struggle, as the brother alluded to early on. We are in a struggle for our existence, but we have to get beyond the existence because, as the brother alluded to correctly, we're in cycles. History is cycles unless you change the material conditions that brought about that historical circumstance. So when you look at our history is a struggle to be accepted in a country that's hostile to us. So what I would say, we have to get what we need is a cultural renaissance similar to the one that we had in the 60s, where we go in and we advance change wherever we are. Because when you look at the 60s model, that's why the 60s was so dangerous. That's why they had to have COINTELPRO, was because the 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 civil rights movement cut one way and the Black Power movement cut another way. It went into Black studies. It went into the schools, uh, the BCUs, Black Student Union movements, and all of these things. That's why COINTELPRO had to kill that. And they say it themselves, the destruction of a possible Messiah, whatever that means. And the documents are there, the information is there. I want to give you another one. Thomas Jefferson in the Virginia Notes, he talks about that one day there'll be a conflict or a destruction of Black people in this country. That's Thomas Jefferson. Then Abraham Lincoln alluded to that. That's why he wanted to ship them off into Africa somewhere. He gave the assignment to Stuart. Stuart came back and said it can't be done. All right. Then there was a thing that was done uh, um, uh, during the 1920s where they did a study because of the Red Summers. And they said, well, what we hope for is that they'll just gradually uh, become extinct. All these are in the public literature. There's a book, going back to what the brother was saying, called We Charge Genocide by William Patterson. That book should be read by every Black person in the world. Okay? I mean, so these things that I'm saying are not new. You can resent what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with that. But trauma exists in the Black community. Hurt Black people are hurting Black people. We are in a pressure cooker, and we've got to deal with it. Nobody is going to save us but us. But we do, as the brother alluded to, and I'm going to put it in another term, we have an identity, we have a crisis identity because we're not sure of who we are, even though on some levels we are, and on other times we're not. They're always changing things because people don't like that. What people change their identity like that uh, from this to that and that? And a lot of that has to do with your intelligentsia. if your intelligentsia is not for you, if your intellectuals, your thinkers, planners, and formulators don't lay out a body of knowledge that can be taught to the next generations, then they become lost, as many of our kids are. That ain't all of them, because they're not bad kids. They're just kids that are misdirected. They don't understand what's what, and they only know what they see on TV, what they hear on radio, some of this foolishness and ridiculousness relative to a people who are trying to exist in the world and they're being edged out. So I agree with some of the things that you said, brother. But at the end of the day, it's a question of destiny. It's a question of what do you want for yourself? And if you can't answer that question, then you're going to be in a trick bag. And I'm saying black people are resilient people, but we have been misdirected. The enemy misdirects us all the time. And with some of these silly arguments that our people buy into, as opposed to being a people who want and who are working towards liberation. Part of what you all have here, this is part of the work, and that is to educate. This is educational. You bringing people in to discuss ideas, and then you talk to them about ideas. You debate with them over ideas, because all these ideas have to do with Black life and what our Black life is to be and what our destiny is to be. And we have to deal with problems. You got to understand the nature of the problems, because if you fail to do that, then your solutions ain't going to be nothing but problems reworked.
Okay.
Any
Brother,
other
brother,
questions or comments?
brother Olumenji,
I welcome.
we have other people that haven't
Can
had a
somebody
chance to.
speak up, because I can't hear you?
I'm speaking as
Let me
loud
try
as I
to
can
do
speak.
this, huh?
I'm trying to speak as loud as I can, but we have a few other people on here. Dr. Charles, we're gonna get back to you, but let's get to Professor Amun-Ra and Brother Joe Hembrick. And before we get to them, what I've heard is that confusion is a major player in all that goes on. And so like he just mentioned, they create a climate of change, constant change, and with added confusion, it keeps people in direction. It sends people in directions they shouldn't go. But I could talk about that a little later. I want to get to Professor Amun-Ra and Brother Joe Hembrick. Okay, Professor Rahh.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear.
Y'all have some kind of control where you can get the volume up, because I can't hear you.
That's on your end, Brother Olumenji.
Say again.
That's on your end. I can't control what you
All
can
right,
hear.
stand by.
Okay. Go ahead, Professor Rahh.
You want to wait for him?
No, you go ahead, because time is moving, and you can make some suggestions and comments.
Well, first of all, appreciating Brother Olumenji presentation, and glad that he is on. When it comes to violence and trauma, that's American. And the violence and trauma that we experience is generally the same violence and trauma that all people in America are subject to. When you see ICE beating up and killing people,
Yeah, go ahead. Good.
using the law as a shield. When you see the country bombing other countries to solve their disputes, these are all learned behaviors. That's the way America is. It's profitable. It's profitable. I think Olumenji mentioned how this country got started through violence, and they left the country they were in because of violence. So they imported their style of violence here. I think Alvin Poussaint, I think Dr. Charles heard of him. He's one of the prominent psychologists in the 60s, wrote for Ebony, who wrote a book, Why Blacks Kill Blacks. Well, why whites kill whites? Why Mexicans kill Mexicans? Why Chinese kill Chinese? Why North Koreans kill South Koreans? That's a part of the aspects of Americanism that is spreading around the world. And they import and export violence, selling guns, selling this and selling that. But there are groups and people and families that have raised their children in ways in which they're not violent because they train them not to be that way. They train them to not to glorify and be influenced by the overwhelming saturation of media, video games, and just news that glorifies violence. Listen, man, some of the pictures that win Academy Awards are the most violent. The Godfather 1 and 2 won Academy Awards. This country loves violence. I think Charles Silverman, Violent Crimes and Violent Criminals, in his book, he said, when the Africans came here, and even some people from Mexico, but not that Mexico was different from this country in the beginning, because but it wasn't a part of their culture. They learned it. Violence is American culture. They theologize it and they ritualize it. You have president today demonizing, character assassinating, setting people up, pardoning people who attack themselves. When they attacked the White House, that was their own institution. It wasn't ours. We helped build it through the Holocaust of enslavement. We got groups and organizations that are working with you. There are many groups that have rites of passages. You have the 100 Black Men doing things. You have the symbols. Even in the 60s, as Brother Olumenji said, many of the organizations, the Panthers, the Organization of Community Alert Patrol, SLANT, I think there was at one time the Blackstone Rangers and Vice Lord, all of them converted to political organizations, political and conscious organizations in the 60s. It was a movement. It was a movement. And you have to, and the only way you solve this problem is coming up with a cultural dynamic that reflects a value, ethic, and moral behavior that's from your culture. You train people to love Black people instead of hate them and demonize them. That's a part of the self-hate that teaches us. But white folks hate themselves. I mean, they do. Look at what they do to each other. You know, you kill their babies and go out in the woods and act like they lost. And I mean, it's just crazy. And if you train your children, discipline them, and you have to be disciplined yourself as a young man and get into your Afrocentricity, a value system. French, the Crest theory, the Chancellor William, Destruction of Black Civilization, John G. Jackson, The Origin of African Civilization. All of them set a foundation. Dr. Yusuf Ben, The Three Major Western Religions and Black Man of the Nile. All them books set Stolen Legacy by George G. James. All them books, you have to require the kids to read them. But parents, the future parents, should be familiar with them. And the only way they're going to be familiar with them is be exposed to organizations, groups, Black studies programs that offer those type classes with instructors that have the balance of knowing who went through the streets and now no longer in there. Because getting out of the streets and learning that behavior that we were in, lumping, hustling, is a attack on ourselves, because we end up hustling and ripping off each other because of segregation. There's some brothers that ripped off some big money, but the point is that we got a long struggle. I actually believe that the Kawida philosophy created by Dr. Karenga and the Nguzo Saba, the seven principles, is a starting point. But you have an extensive background in community service and licensed counselor and things of this nature. And I'm pretty sure you've been able to reach a lot of young people. But we got to rebuild the Black movement, the Black conscious and cultural movement. That's all I got to say.
Well, I would like to say, I think Dr. Karenga has made a major contribution and continues to make a major. I come from the school of the Communiversity, Dr. Bobby Wright Anderson Thompson, and we all in the same thing. You know, struggle is about longevity. And I appreciated your remarks, brother. Struggle is about longevity. And Doc Karenga's done some good work. I think the Nation of Islam, 40-some. I mean, we have institutions, but for some reason, not enough of our people support that.
Well, there's a reason. This country spends millions of dollars to make sure we don't get ourselves together. You mentioned it, COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO wasn't just a practice by the feds. It's practiced by almost every institution, political, economic, educational institution, through redlining, through mind manipulation and all kinds of stuff, miseducation. That's what Carter G. Woodson was talking about, the miseducation of the Negro. Who was miseducating them?
Right. Well, I don't disagree with that, but the point I'm trying to make is despite whatever the adversities are that we face, we have to deal with it. We have to find a way. We have to find a way to ultimately win. And we haven't won yet. we're
Well,
still
I
we're
disagree. As
still
long as you fight,
we're
you haven't
still
lost.
we're still struggling with this, and the struggle we keep going backwards.
I
Uh,
disagree with that.
well, okay, I respect that, but we go backwards.
Some
Uh,
of us do.
we well we it's the point I'm trying to make is that we have to look at this as a people, okay? And as a people, when certain things change, we start all over again. Okay? I mean, it starts with identity. You got some people now who say, well, we don't want to be African American. We want to be this, that, and the other. Or we want to be Moors, or we want to be this, that, and the other. I mean, to be a people, you require a commonality. Uh,
Well,
one of the
James
greatest,
Rogers said there ain't but one race, and that's the human race. But let me
well,
just say this. Let me just say this
I
with you.
understand.
We
I
go by,
understand
we don't go
what
by what they call themselves. We go by their behavior. It's their
Yeah,
behavior
but
and their practice.
behavior is part of identity, and identity is part of what you call yourself or what you answer to. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying
Oh,
this is why you have confusion. So when people ask you this, that, and the other, you get several. What people do that? you know, and I understand why that happened, okay? But at some point, and this is the dilemma that we're in. And I think Fanon talks about it in his book where it says every every generation has a destiny to either fulfill it or or a mission to fulfill it or to betray it or words to that effect. I'm just saying, uh, I see us as a political body. We are a people by our history and by our historical experience, by several commonalities, particularly the one of slavery, the Jim Crow and Reconstruction period, and American apartheid. All those, in my view, make us a people. And that's how I look at it. I look at us as a people. And I want for us what all people, great people, want for themselves. And that's to be able to be themselves and to have power to be able to execute that. So that's all I'm saying. I don't think we're really disagreeing. We might see things a little bit different. So I respect the work of Manolana. I think he's done good work. I know he's been to Chicago, and he was even at our center because he was invited by the great Dr. Bobby Wright uh, to train or talk to some of the staff because we used to have that. That was part of our political education because Bobby's position was if you don't understand the people or know the people, how you gonna treat the people? And so he brought people in, of which Monolana was one of them. Okay. And I've known several of Monolana's associates in Chicago. So, you know, what I want for us is nationhood. I I take the position of Martin Delany, okay, not Frederick Douglass. But the practicality and pragmatism demands that we do things here and we figure out solutions for alternatives until we can get strong enough to be able to uh, create what we're trying to create. And I think we have to look at the world. We have to look at Africa. We have to look at the Caribbean. We have to look at we have to look at places where we can spread out and build and develop and grow. I've seen various experiments. I've seen them with Hebrew Israelites, uh, where they've gone to Israel. I'm not saying that people should do that. I'm just saying we have to look at comprehensive alternatives for us as a collective body. And that's the respect that I give to Brother Karinga, because I think that he's a very good social theorist. And I think Nguza Saba is a good piece, particularly when you're dealing with kids relative to Kwanzaa. So I respect what you said, even though you think we may disagree. Any
The
other?
only thing I was disagreeing with is that we're losing. No, I think that as long as you're fighting, you're not losing. Second, the struggle is a long, protracted struggle. We've come a
Right.
long ways from the Holocaust of enslavement to where we are.
If,
And we may not, like Martin Luther King said, I may not get there with
Yeah.
you, but we will get there.
But when I said losing, I didn't mean that we had lost. Struggle is about ups and downs, peaks and valleys. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But you even alluded that we keep going through cycles. That means we start all over again. How long can we keep starting all over again? At some point, there's something that has to be resolved and put there that the next generation can bite their teeth into and build. So if you thought I said that we lost, no, that's not what I'm saying, because we're still here. We're still talking. You all are still have what you're doing. That doesn't sound like somebody who's lost. It sounds like somebody who's still in the game. But we got to be clear that in the game, sometimes you have to adapt, you have to improvise so that you can overcome. Okay? And this is a clever enemy. He's very clever. And and people don't want to take it to that end because they think that we have made it. And that's what I was saying, is that many times the generations think that because you had a black president and a black woman as vice president, if you consider a black woman, that we've won. And they don't realize that, yes, some things have changed, but it's become more nuanced as opposed to more outright bogus. But it's the same thing. It's the same fundamental. So we together, we just, we're just looking at it a little bit different. But I appreciate what you said.
I appreciate you too, brother. And all the good work you're doing.
Thank you. The good work you're doing. All right. Please, anybody else? Let's have some dialogue here. Let's get some of them ladies to come back to the phone.
Dr.
Go ahead,
Charles.
Brother Charles.
That was an awesome exchange between Baba Olumenji and Baba Rahh. Both you gentlemen, have poured into me and encouraged me, and this is a part of why we even do, this piece about the diaspora, about a message to the black diaspora, so we can hear from our elders, and that we can put today into a larger concept, and have a better understanding of what it is that we're doing and what it's been done as we move forward. So, and my question is for the two of you. It's for Nana, and it's for Baba Rahh. So so one of the things that we hear today when people are trying to figure out what it is that we're going through, and they're like, well, if they only knew, if they understood this, that, or the other. And when they say they're talking about the enemy. So given that we have things such as, we have the Kerner report, we had a Moynihan report, we have the Coleman report, we have all of these reports, and there's many others. Given that all of this is documented, and Nana, you already alluded to this, given all of this is documented, as we continue to resist and to by Rah's point, we win when we resist. In order for us to continue the resistance, what's our relative responsibility given the amount of intelligence that's in the public domain via government reports?
I can respond. We have our own institutes, the Joint Center for Political and Research in Washington, D.C. Then you have the HBCU's studies. They just came out with 28%. We're only 3% of all major colleges. If you the HBCUs, but they produce 28% of graduates that have focused in STEM, and that is science, technology, engineering, and math. They produce the majority of them. 28% of them in the country, and that's a major thing. First of all, I think Rashaki says this, and most Black conscious people say this, Munefe Asante and all of them. You can't let your oppressor be your teacher. Some of this research they do is good when it comes to health, as Dr. Olumenji said. When it comes to understanding pathologies, especially AIDS and Ebola and measles and all of that, because it affects everybody, but it hits us harder. So we pay attention to those research. But when it comes down to behavior, this guy, he'll have you thinking that all your kids need to be in special ed, regardless of their achievements in science and math. They couldn't even got the space shuttle off the ground if it wasn't for Black people. As Ivan Van Sertima in his books on Blacks and science, he talked about the women that created the diet, the brother that created the cameras for the space shuttle, the brothers, just so many major roles we played in helping the European in this technology. But the point is, what you were saying is that you can't trust a government that mistreats you with their statistics. And they don't pay no attention to them. If they're favorable to us, they ain't gonna pay it no attention. And if it's bad, they're gonna exploit it. So I look at us doing our own research. When I was a professor, I required the students to do research on us and do surveys. That's what we took classes in statistics and methods for research. We do have various forms of our groups that do research. The Black Enterprise used to list the 100 Black corporations, and they had many articles on studies and research. I think the book, Even the Rats Were Right, by, I forget the author, he studied saying that most research by white folks is done on white rats, but we have to start doing our own studies on our own people. We used to have in-depth study on sickle cell anemia and effort. I think Olumenji is right when he comes to the point of us looking at, and once we do our own studies, you'll find that we have more progress, more achievements that have been suppressed and kept from us as far as our contributions to world civilization and health. I mean, most kids don't know about William Hale, the first open heart surgery. They don't know about Lattimore, all the people that created all the creations and scientific innovations that we've had. And we look at the Black Museum and Smithsonian and all of that, and the Schomburg Library. We got the data. The information is there. Great societies, the building of the pyramids, all of that stuff is there. We're just starting to teach it. We just started Black Studies in 1968. You understand? I mean, it takes time for us to figure out how to get that into the families and into the kids of strong families. We ain't gonna get into all families. Because they destroy men and women with drugs and alcohol. And that's what Olumenji is talking about. The drugs, we don't, every drug, maybe liquor, hard drugs, was imported to us into the community. Like they imported heroin into China. I mean, they imported smallpox and drugs into the Native Americans. You know, we had our own drugs, of course, for rituals and various forms of celebration, but the abuse of drugs, addictive drugs, chemical drugs, cocaine is something they brought into the Black community. LSDs, crack, all of that was introduced and made it cheap so that everybody could get it. But those that are smart knew how to stay away from it. And that's the struggle. Olumenji, you want to comment?
Nana, you got a thought? You got a thought on that?
Well, I want to first say I agree. Whatever we do, it has to be twofold. We have to become pragmatic visionaries. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we're guided by a vision that solves our political question. And when I say political, I'm not talking about electoral politics. I'm talking about the African American or the African interest in this country and what we want for ourselves and fashion that into an identity. And we have it already. I mean, you know, everybody ain't doing everything wrong, but enough of us ain't doing what's right for us. And so what comes out of that is the capacity to build, because we need builders. We need people who know how to build things. And when I say build things, I'm talking communities and people. We need people who are healers, who can help advance the remedies to this hurt, pain, and suffering. We need to have a spiritual renaissance, a rebirth, to get away from some of the stuff that we have. And eventually it will happen. But then, most importantly, we need to organize ourselves and then look at everything and question what is in our best interest and then pursue it. We need to have wise people such as who have asked these questions, and all across the country this hours is really look at this because back in, and see, this is the thing. When you look at Black people historically and some of the things they were doing during the segregated periods, where they had Black town movements and Black state movements, and the towns that they built were better than the towns that white folks lived in. That's why white folks had to burn them down. Okay? I mean, that's not a defeated people. Okay? What we have to do is prevent ourselves from becoming a defeated people. And that's why many of the things that the elders did when we came up was worth it. Now, I'm not saying those were the good old days because we ain't never had good old days, but it was better than what we have now. And I'm saying we need builders, we need healers, we need people who have a love for us, our people, and wants to see the best for us and are able to have foresight and insight and are guided by a vision and are able to mobilize enough of our people to be able to do this. We have to create mass-based organizations, but it cannot be like we've had it in the past because the forces of repression will move to destroy them. We need networks, hundreds of networks all across this country that at some point, some fashion, they connect with each other and they do work. And then we need to be mindful of the political conditions and then decide how best to deal with them. Okay? America's in a period of the 50s and 60s. Okay? This is Nixon. We've been through this. Nixon, Reagan, Trump, the moral majority, the Tea Party movement, and now the Magnum. We've been through this. But each time we have to stop, we have to start over. We really need to look into how do we build economics? How do we build that? Not that money in and of itself is going to remedy our problem, because I don't think that will. But it will help us resolve things that need to happen in these communities, in our families, etc. And I think the thing of schools, yes, some kids should go to college if that's what they choose, but I'm also looking at Booker T. Kids being able, women and men being able to do things with their hands so that they can develop a living. So we have work to do. And the work is wherever you are. We don't have to wait for a single leader to tell us to go to the left or to go to the right. We see it and then we do it because we know it has to be done. And we understand the consequences of it if we don't do it. I mean, we can't be children and expect to survive and thrive and evolve in this country unless we decide to take destiny in our hands and do the work of it. Nobody's going to do the work for us. We have to do our own work because at the end of the day, this impacts us. And so that's what I would say. We really need a healing movement in the Black community because there's so much hurt, pain, and suffering among our people. Just so much. And a lot of that comes from what crack did to these communities, and these generations are still trying to recover from them. So that's just my view. Maybe one day you'll do something as a body that just talks about solutions, and I would love to be a part of that forum. What are the things that we should do? What are the things we should be about? We must have vision, and then we must be pragmatic in terms of how we make that vision happen, and be serious, and then have the national will to be able to make sure that that happens, and that we struggle and give ourselves, from our spiritual foundation, the energy to continue even though we may be exhausted. That's the best way I can answer the question that you put forth.
Awesome answer, and thank both of our elders. I'm moving around, so y'all keep getting different backgrounds. I'm in the midst of, because this is another conversation we need to have, perhaps at another time. I'm in the midst of a tornado cleanup. We got hit hard in my community. Homewood, in the south suburbs of Chicago, was ground zero for the tornado. And so I have electrical crews in my backyard right now clearing lines. But I want to thank the two of you for that thoughtful response, because this is an example of modeling, in that the fact that we might disagree on a point somewhere in discourse doesn't mean that we're enemies. It just really means that we disagree at some point in discourse. The point is, are we trying to get to the same place? And I thought that that was an awesome example of how elders work these things out. And Nana, your point toward the end of your statement, that we just need to keep building this network where we're having these conversations. So again, I thank you for those responses. Brother Rashaki, go ahead.
Okay, we had Brother Joe Hembrick. Did you have a question or a comment before we end this today?
Tuned in so late, but appreciate the presenter, Olumenji, out of Dr. Bobby Wright camp. I was teaching menticide to my kids 30 years ago. And that's something we need to understand, that, you know, they're trying to destroy our minds with the intent of destroying us as a people. I agree with the right. We used to have a program called Hawk back in the day, which was along the same line. And I want to say briefly that we suffer from cultural genocide because we keep practicing the culture of the enemy, which will never work for us. But one of the main things I think we need to do, be able to do in this quest, is to protect ourselves. You know, we getting took out left and right every time we turn around. So that's a big one. Until we can protect ourselves, because we come up with plans, we have a man, the man get killed and the plan dies. But we need to practice burying the man and carrying on the plan. And that's about it. Appreciate all the presenters and what they had to say. And sorry I missed so much of it. Seemed like it was a real good show today. And that's about it. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you,
Appreciate you
brother.
coming. Appreciate you coming. Dr. Charles, do you want to close us out?
Hey, Rashaki,
Yes.
I just want to tell everybody I wish them a happy month of Black August, that we celebrating all the great things we've done in August. 1619, our first ships, and the Haiti's Revolution, there was so many things that was done in August. The 1965 Watts Rebellion. It started with the Black prisoners, and that We got the Institute of Black World, and they do a lot of research. And we have this Dr. Patterson Institute, Frederick, the UNCF, Frederick Patterson Research Institute that does a lot of studies on us as a people. And I just think we just got to keep on pushing. Keep on pushing, no matter what, and rebuild the Black movement and develop a cultural apparatus. I really like Olumenji and Dr. Charles for having this forum on diaspora, because we are diverse. We have a big chin. Obama and Kamala, they weren't Black vice presidents and presidents. They were Democratic. They were Black people that were the Democratic vice president and president. They did what they could for us. And I ain't taking nothing from their achievement. But at the same time, we have to know that we only represent 10% of this population. We helped get them in, but we know who was paying. Sante Sana.
Yeah. Also, before you go, Dr. Charles, I want to thank Dr. Joanna Cain for having the beauty shop listen to the presentation. That was really
Awesome.
thoughtful of you to let the ladies
You're still
listen.
here.
That's excellent. And I want the ladies to participate if they want to be a guest. They can contact
join us.
you. And I appreciate all of you being here. Okay, Dr. Charles.
And if I can just jump in here for 1 minute, I also want to thank the sisters with their questions and comments. I appreciate that. Dialogue is important, and we got to dialogue with each other. Thank you. Go ahead, Kofi.
Thank you, Nana. And again, I want to thank Nana Olumenji, and I want to thank Baba Rahh, because this is what this is about. This is about us convening our elders who have perspective on the fight. And it's about finding right pathways. It's not necessarily about right or wrong in as much as it's about finding right pathways. Now, if your pathway is wrong, then that's certainly we're gonna deal with that. But if we're trying to get to the same space, the goal is to figure out what is the best way for the masses, not for the individual, but for the masses. And that's what we're trying to bring forth. And I think this was an excellent dialogue. And I thank everybody for joining, particularly the beauty shop. And Rashaki, I think we hit it out the park today. Close it out.
All right. I appreciate again everybody coming to listen to the presentation and participate. And if you go to Community Education Network, you will find that we have shows weekly. Then if you can look up the Level Set. They're on YouTube, and they have a lot of videos that's very stimulating mentally. Love the Level Set. So like I always say at the end, each one teach one. In Black Conscious Corner, everybody continue to have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.